Okay. So here's Erikson's model, and I just want to kind of explain a few aspects of it again, as I did a little bit yesterday. Is Erikson did believe, just like Freud did, that during certain periods of our life, we are at the ultimate ability to develop some type of skill or some type of emotional understanding of our world. And therefore, we come across conflicts between whether we develop things, for example, like trust or mistrust. Okay. Now, what I would encourage you to do is Erikson's model is a dichotic model, meaning that either we develop trust or if we develop mistrust in this first example with infancy. Okay. The way I would encourage you to think about this in more modern or contemporary views is that none of us probably develop complete trust. And I'm hoping none of us completely develop mistrust, but we're somewhere in between these two polar opposites. Okay. And a lot of this is a social emotional model or a psychosocial model. And this means that it deals with the interaction with our world. And so we'll find out during infancy, usually it's our primary caregiver or our mother and or our father. And, I know as a dad, I hope I did a good job developing trust in my son and him developing the ability to trust others. But I also know that as a father, I was an imperfect human being and I had my moments. So I know that there's mistrust in some aspects of his life as well. And that's the way I kind of think about it as we go through and explain it. I'm going to give the dichotic views, and then if you want to do some self-reflection on yourself, think of yourself, where are you between these two extremes? Okay. So So let's start with his model, and we're going to start in infancy, of course. And if you think about an infant between the age of birth to about 1.5 to 2 years of age, this is a period of life where we are completely dependent upon someone else for to, for feeding us, giving us uh, hydrating us, warmth, cooling, comfort. Um, and really, before this, we don't really have the ability to, go get ourselves a steak out of the fridge or go get us a cool cup of water or the like. So we're very, very dependent upon someone else in our life to deliver those things for us. Okay. And so this is, according to Erikson, the ultimate period of time to develop trust versus mistrust. Okay. And I'm going to define these two in a way as trust is your ability to have people in your life that you know will show up and help you out. And as long as you reciprocate that in helping them out, you will continually have people in your life that you can go to. They can rely on you and you can rely on them. Mistrust is this belief or this emotion, and we should put this in very emotional terms, that there's no one in my life I can rely on, that people don't care about me, people think that I'm a nuisance. And even when I've tried to help these people out, they're not appreciative of it. And so I don't have people in my life to rely on, and I can't rely on others. So that's kind of the dichotic idea behind this trust versus mistrust. Okay. But how is trust versus mistrust displayed? How is this developed in the infancy stage? Okay. Well, what we're going to talk about, especially in infancy and early childhood, the mother child dance. Okay. And I'm going to use the word mothers because I like moms. But this can be with any primary caretaker, the very primary, the first caregiver for an infant or a child. Okay, so these can develop with either, but we're going to use mom as our example. Okay, so what does complete trust look like? Okay, well, baby cries, mom shows up, changes baby, and then if mom's in the room, you probably have saw this once you change your baby or whatnot, or even the dad's in the room if you've changed your baby. You kind of have this moment afterwards where they kind of do this smile and they look at you, maybe they cute coo, and you smile back and you have that moment. Okay, that's what we call the mother infant dance. Is a need was fulfilled, the infant reciprocates, basically, if you want to put it in verbal terms, is saying thank you for taking care of me, mom. But you got to remember this is on the emotional level. Okay, so mom goes away, baby cries, mom shows up, feeds the baby, have our moment, put the baby down, baby cries, mom shows up, maybe needs some blankies, and it goes back and forth to this. Infant has a distress, someone shows up, and we reciprocate that moment with each other. Okay. And what is this infant learning on an emotional level? And this is an important aspect of this theory. You got to remember that infants don't understand words, as we would say. That starts to develop after about 1.5 years of life. Is they're learning this on an emotional level. This is an emotional thing. We don't cognitively decide to trust or mistrust someone. Okay. In fact, when we're adults, um, the best predictor of whether someone will start some type of friendship or relationship with someone is in the first 1.5 seconds of meeting them. Okay. And if we measure this on a minute muscular level, if in 1.5 seconds the person does withdraw behaviors, meaning they back off, they look away, they back off, or if they do approach behaviors, they get closer, that is the number one predictor of whether those two will actually become friends or have some type of healthy work relation, maybe even an intimate partner relationship. We think that we choose our friends. We think that we choose our coworkers that we like and dislike. But if we really look at it, it's really that 1.5 seconds of first interaction on that emotional level that really is the number one predictor of liking and disliking someone. Okay. So this is also why at this level, it's important to understand that our first language is emotions. Our second language is verbal words. Okay, but let's go to the mistrust end of things. So what I would like you to do, and I'm going to try and do this, but I'm kind of in a good mood today, so I don't know if I can, is instead of listening to the words I say, listen to the emotions and feel the emotions. Okay. So we're going to start the narrative. Baby cries, no one shows up. 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 Baby cries, mom comes in the room and goes, "What do you need now? I'm busy doing the things that I need to get done, and here you are crying. Why can't you just settle here and be okay?" All right. Again, I hope you didn't have anyone in your background listening to that and wondering, oh, are you being yelled at by your mother? But what I hope you felt is hopefully the emotions behind what the mother was saying, that dismissiveness, that feeling of what am I doing wrong? Why doesn't this person care for me? If you want to put it in those verbal terms, I hope I did an okay job in creating that emotion. Okay. And in this extreme end, the infant is obviously learning mistrust. that their needs can't be fulfilled by other people, and they won't be fulfilled by other people, and that when someone does show up, you don't know if you did the right thing or the wrong thing, which is going to set up in our next stage of development as we start to learn language, shame and doubt. Okay. And so here we have trust and mistrust. And from Erikson's theory, if we have time this coming Monday when we do our lecture on emotions and feelings, we'll talk about theories that have expanded on this trust mistrust area known as attachment and attachment theory. Okay. Because this is kind of Erikson's model is kind of the grandparent of what's going to eventually become what's known as attachment theory. Okay. And so, but this is kind of what Erikson kind of feels like is going on during this very age where we can't really do things for ourselves. Okay. Now, as I go down here, I want you to imagine that nothing in the child's environment changes, because one of the questions I always get is this a trajectory? Is this a fixed trajectory? And the answer kind of is yes, if nothing significant in the child's life changes. Okay. Are these fixed? Can they be changed over time and whatnot? The answer is yes, they can. It just is a little bit harder. So a child who develops mistrust, shame, and doubt and guilt, as you can say, between here 0 and the age of 5, can they change that as they become older? The answer is yes. It's just going to be more difficult. It's going to require more cognitive and emotional work. Okay. So I want to bring that up right away. So let's go to our next age group. So if we've developed trust in this age, then this sets us up, if nothing it changes, to the next stage. Okay. And what is it that we know about 1.5 to about 3 year olds? Okay. If you've ever had a 1.5 and 3 year old, you know that they have become mobile. Either they're crawling, sometimes walking by about 18 months, some earlier. They are putting everything in their mouth. And they are really starting to do what we call explore their world. Okay. And this, according to Erikson, sets us up for either autonomy or shame and doubt. Okay. And so, let's kind of rehearse the difference between autonomy and shame and doubt. Okay. So one of the things that we can note about this early childhood period is that children explore. They're exploring their world, and trying to figure out what it is all about. Hold on just a second. Okay. So let's go through this. Again, we're going to do kind of the mother-child, early child dance about what healthy autonomy in a child looks at. In the attachment world, they start to use mothers and fathers, and they call them the secure base. It's kind of that base of operations where a child feels like, or should feel like, they can rely on that individual, and but then be able to freely explore their world. Okay. And between the age of 1 to about 3, you actually can go further than this. About 4 to 5, you actually go into the play years. Is that the child will go and play in their room for 10-15 minutes, and then they'll go in the kitchen. Let's say mom's in the kitchen, and they'll check in on mom in the kitchen. Just, hey mom, I'm here, just checking you out. taking care of things, and then they'll go play for another 5, 10 minutes, and then they go back and they say, "Hey, mom, looking good, everything's fine, everything's good," and they keep doing this interaction of going and exploring and then reinforcing their secure relationship with a person, just in case, again, this is on an emotional level, just in case they have a crisis or something they can't handle. Okay. And in this, what the child is learning is autonomy, the ability to be self-sufficient, to be active in the world, but then have that secure social relationship that makes it something doable. And if you think about this in more adult terms, these are kind of signs of a healthy relationship, right? When you have a healthy relationship, you might text at 10 a.m. and say, "Hey, just thinking about you. Hope you're having a good day." And if it's a healthy relationship, if they're able to, they'll text you back and, "Hey, everything's good." And you'll do these things once or twice, or sometimes in the beginning of the relationship, 50 times during a day. But you have these healthy interactions. Okay. And in fact, when we get to some of the signs of a long-term loving relationship, where people after 50 years are still deeply, deeply in love with each other, we're going to find that emotional security is one very common theme between these individuals, is that emotional security is the ability to tell your partner anything you want without fear of them laughing at you, getting angry at you, those kinds of things. It's in adult relationships. This is the person at the office or at the workplace who doesn't understand their workmates when they come up and say, "I could never tell my wife this, but," or "I could never tell my boyfriend this, but." "Don't tell my boyfriend or girlfriend this, but," and they don't understand that thing, and they don't understand why they can't tell their partner the thing that they're about to tell you. Okay. And we have found that in many of these relationships, it started with this early childhood mother child caregiver child dance about being able to healthily explore the world, but reinforce those relationships that are important, that make it so that you can be successful. Okay. So this is autonomy. And then the next, on the other end of the spectrum, is shame and doubt. Okay. Um, First of all, I want to kind of give a definition of what we mean by shame and doubt. So shame is a painful feeling about who you are as a person. Okay. So, for example, of the self, they define the self as, "I am a bad person." An example of this is if you lie and feel like you're a terrible person because of it. Okay. And it often leads to things like withdrawal, hiding, and feeling unworthy of love and connection. Okay. Now, doubt, on the other hand, is a feeling of uncertainty or lack of confidence, especially about one's abilities or decisions that we make. So they're constantly asking, "Can I really do that? Did I make the right choice?" And they're constantly questioning what they did. So an example is feeling unsure you're qualified to give someone advice, as an example. It can lead to things like hesitation, anxiety, um, and second guessing a person, that the individual, constantly. Okay. And it's rooted in uncertainty and fear of failure. Okay. So I want to kind of explain why this is, how this occurs. Remember, in the beginning, there's mistrust. The parent is inattentive. They blame the child for their needs. They make the child feel like they're a burden. And into early childhood, what results is a child, if we put it in animated terms like we did with autonomy, This is a child who is clinging to mom's leg and gets very, very anxious if the child is pulled away from mom and gets very scared. Or it is the child who could give a rat's butt about mom, dad, or anyone. They're that child who just doesn't want anything to do with anyone and is just despondent. This is the child that, if there's a house, a family party, someone asks, hey, where's Joe and Joey? And they go look for Joey and they find him 2 blocks away at some neighbor's house, just doing their own thing. Okay. So shame and so why are these children doing it? Well, the first child is doing it because they don't feel like they can make a decision on their own because of the caregiver's response to them. So one child can't leave the one thing that might be able to help them navigate their world, which is the mother. The other one just has kind of given up. They're like, these people don't care about me, so why should I care about them? Okay. And again, I'm going to bring this up. This is not something a child rationalizes. Okay. These are emotions, social emotions that drive our behaviors and the way we feel and think about the world. Okay. So a child isn't sitting there going, they don't care about me. I'm going to go. They just know that they feel more comfortable being away from those people, or they feel more comfortable being overly clingy to the caregiver. Okay. All right. So the next phase of life, if you remember, when we talked about Sigmund Freud, I mentioned that this is a period where play is vitally, vitally important. Okay. In fact, there is a strong, strong, strong correlation and a strong research literature that I'm going to use the word again, strongly suggests that the amount of play a child has during these age groups are associated with higher cognitive abilities, better decision-making abilities, better emotional regulation, better. I mean, the more we allow our children to play during this age group, the better off they are. And I can't emphasize that enough. Okay. But this is, according to Erikson, where we can best develop what's known as initiative versus guilt. Now, initiative is the ability to initiate something. It's the ability to say, hey, let's do this, or hey, I have an idea. It's the child in the preschool that says, hey, let's go play house, or let's go, you be the brother, I'll be the sister, you be the dad, you be the mom. It's the child who says, who, when there's boring things going on, that says, hey, let's play a game, let's do something. Okay. um, so it's the ability to discover or ways of initiating action. Okay. Now guilt, we need to differentiate that between doubt and shame. So when we talk about shame, this is a feeling of who you are. Doubt is uncertainty. Guilt is a painful feeling about you, something you did. So we can have doubt before we do something, and we can have shame, but guilt is a painful feeling about something you did that goes against your values or morals. I did something bad. So you feel bad for yelling at your friend because you know it hurt them. Okay, that's a good type of guilt. But when we talk about guilt in this arena that we're talking about, the guilt Erikson is talking about is that guilt that everything I do is wrong. This is a child who constantly is second guessing themselves. It's the child that is constantly saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, for really no apparent reason. This is the very quiet child who doesn't want to do things so wrong, they actually develop shyness, which is a fear of social interaction. And if we look at the literature on shyness, we can see that this is a starting point for people who grow up and with severe shyness in adolescence and into adulthood. Okay, is this period of time. Okay, so initiative is this ability to initiate. And again, if we've developed trust, we've developed self-sufficiency and autonomy, this sets us up for initiative. And if we look at the progression of this into the play years, definitely if we're following with shame and doubt, guilt is going to follow as we start to try and initiate play. Okay. All right. So moving right along, the next phase, again, if nothing has changed in the child's life, is industry versus inferiority. Okay. So the best way to kind of explain industry versus inferiority is let's take a little boy named Billy. Okay. And Billy strums on the guitar at home, and mom and dad go in the room and, gosh, Billy, you're going to be our next rock star. Their his brothers and sisters are saying, yay, Billy's playing again. He play this, my favorite song. And Billy's going, wow, my family really, really likes what I do. So let's say Billy takes his guitar to school and plays his guitar at school, and his friends are going, we should start a rock band someday, Billy. I'll be the drummer. We'll do that. Hey, play this song, da da da. And what is Billy learning in this situation? He's learning that something he does, playing the guitar, has value outside of himself, that it has value to other people, that his guitar playing is not something that only he enjoys, but mom and dad, brother and sister, friends at school, they all enjoy guitar playing. And so, more than likely, Billy will continue with guitar playing. Okay. Now, on the other hand, let's say we have Billy and he's strumming on the guitar, and dad comes in and says, Billy, I told you not to play that damn thing after I get home from work. Just play it when I'm not here. Thank you. Okay. So Billy's like, well, I can't do this with dad around. So maybe I go to school and I strum on the guitar, and my friends are kind of like, you know what? You probably better work on your English and math, because I don't think guitar playing is going to work out for you, Billy. That's just not something very, very good. Okay. What's then developing with this child in this one basic example is he's learning what's known as inferiority, that what I do, even though I enjoy it, provides no value to other people. So other people don't like it. They think I'm less than, and I can't do it. And so in this child, they develop inferiority. Okay. Now, I used a very, very basic example to illustrate this point. And I would encourage you, when you think about these things, think about it globally, because with every child, there's things that people will reward, and there's things people will, if we want to use the word punishment, are going to punish. And there's things that kids are going to learn that they're good at, and things that they're not so good at. Okay. But this is a global thing of a child either continually being encouraged to develop their skills and ability, and a child who is ignored They don't want it around. They don't want anything to do with it. And that's inferiority. Okay. Now, I will say it is much more complicated than this. And if you take the Psych 240 class, we'll get into this topic a lot more. We might get into it a little bit when we get to social psychology. But from Erikson's theory, we get one of the verse theories of bullying. Okay. Because in the early ideas of bullying, both the bully and the child and the victim of bullying, I should say, are both what he would consider inferior. Okay. So one child, in order to make himself or herself not feel inferior, will pick on other people. They will pick out individuals to kind of boost their self esteem through the bullying process. Okay. Now, the one thing that a bully is not going to pick on is a child who has industry, because this child knows they have value. So, what does the bully pick out? He picks out the other children that both also have inferiority issues because they're the easiest target. Okay. And this theory is still one that has been codified in a lot of popular literature, popular ideas. Some of the challenges to it, though, is that we do know that children who obviously are displaying industry, so you can think about the straight A athlete who engages in bullying behaviors. Okay. And so there is evidence. So there's evidence that partly support it, maybe for some bullies and some victims. But the evidence also points towards that there's a larger issue going on beyond skill development and reinforcement for those skills. So, but hopefully we'll have time to talk a little bit more about that topic as we move on. But I do just want to point out this is one of the kind of first theories from the psychological literature behind bullying and victimization. Okay. All right. I do want to kind of just stop and open up the chat and ask, does anybody have any questions at where we're at right now? You could put it in the chat. You can unmute yourself. Is there any questions? All right. Thank you, Joanna. All right. Thank you, Shayna. All right. Cool. All right. So let's move on. So we're going to get into adolescence. And one of the things, and so when we consider adolescence, really what we're considering is near the end of puberty and on. Okay. Usually we mark adolescence by the female's first menstrual cycle and the males by their first ejaculate. Okay. Or, yeah, it gets a little more complicated than that with boys, but and that's when we kind of mark adolescence. Okay. And so, and one of the main theories of adolescence is because what happens when we go through puberty is we leave our child body and we gain our adult body. Okay. And we start getting our secondary sexual characteristics such as facial hair, uh, breast. I can't talk today. Breasts, all of those different things. Men's shoulders tend to start to get broader. All of those different secondary sexual characteristics. Okay. And what's believed is that at this point, the child sees himself going into adulthood physically. And so they must also be changing mentally and understanding themselves as an independent person, independent of their family. And kind of a simple experiment that can be done to understand this is let's say you take a 14-year-old and a 6-year-old, okay, and you ask both of them, who are you? The 14-year-old is more likely to say something like, I'm a soccer player, I love to dance, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that. Okay. The 6-year-old is more likely to say, I'm Joe and Ann's son. I'm part of my family. And so very much in early childhood, what they describe is connection with their family. While in adolescence, we tend to connect with who we are as an individual. Okay. Now, um, this is when, according to Erikson and according to a lot of current research, this is when a person codifies their identity. Okay. Our identity has actually been pretty much set since about the age of 6. In fact, the best predictor of whether someone will go to college or not is their attitude towards school at around the age of 6. Okay. As an example. But it's in our adolescent years when we're not just comparing ourselves to our family, but we're comparing ourselves with our peer groups and who we choose to be in our friend circle, where we really, really codify our identity. Okay. And so I just want to spend just a moment to explain the difference between identity and what is known as role confusion. Okay. And we're actually going to kind of rewind time a little bit to a gentleman by the name of William James. Okay, if you remember in our introduction, William James gave psychology two terms that have been used and researched over and over and over. One is called the self concept. Okay, your self concept is everything that you can state is you. Okay, and in this self concept, we have two different selves. We have our social self and what James called our spiritual self, but in more modern or contemporary times, we call the personal self. The social self is everything you are that is defined by your social world. So your gender, your age, whether you're a mother, father, whether you're single or in a relationship, whether you're a student or a professor, whether you're uh, Tohono or Apache or Navajo, or you're white European, um, any of those types of identity that are defined by your social world. Okay. Your personal self is that makes you unique despite your social identities. Uh-oh. Hold on, gang. I am lecturing in my kitchen today, and I have a wireless keyboard, and my kitty decided to jump over all over my wireless keyboard. So I apologize about that. All right. So your personal self is that thing that makes you unique. So it is your temperament. It is whether you're introverted or extroverted. It's whether it's all of those things that make you uniquely you. Okay. And we'll actually get more depth into this in another lecture that we're going to do later on. And so kind of hold this in your mind for the moment. The other term that William James developed is something called self-esteem. Okay. Self-esteem is your emotional analysis of whether you like yourself or not like yourself, whether you feel you're good or you're bad, you're worthy or worthless. Okay. And it's an evaluation of your self concept. All right. So those are some terms, and we'll get more into those as we move through the term here. But for now, what I want to talk about is what is the difference between a healthy identity versus role confusion. Okay. A healthy identity, according to current research, I know this is going to sound strange, is a person with multiple identities. Okay. So let's take let's take a team, or okay, maybe this team, and I'm going to use letters to represent different aspects of this person. Maybe this person is a good sister. Maybe I'll use SO. Maybe they're good at soccer. Maybe they define themselves as a good girlfriend. Maybe they're good at math. Um, Maybe they have a strong cultural identity. They connect with their culture, and do things, and other qualities. We'll just leave these as 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And this person has all of these qualities, and they invest in all of them. And now the question is what makes this a healthy identity? Well, let's say that maybe this person defines their self-concept as being a good girlfriend. They're good at with their relationship, they're attentive, they're all those things. But let's say the boyfriend breaks up with them. Okay. Well, that means that this identity is temporarily destroyed. Their esteem for this identity is going to go down. But this child or this adolescent is able to say, okay, this hurts, this is painful, but I'm still a good soccer player. I'm still good at math. I'm still good I'm still a good sister. I'm good at 1, and I'm good at 2, and I'm good at 3. And so they can maintain a healthy self esteem and a healthy concept because they realize that there's much more to them than just being a girlfriend, as an example. Okay. Now, what is then, if this is a healthy identity, what is role confusion? Okay. Role confusion is when, and we'll draw another circle here, is when the individual invests and it's only defined by one aspect of who they are. Okay. And I'm going to use the example of football players because at one of the colleges I worked at, I ran their behavioral health center. And this college had dorms and they had a football program. Okay. But the recruitment for the football team, they did unique recruitment. Okay. Is they went out and they marketed themselves as the second chance college. And what they went and targeted is excellent football players that were playing for universities and other colleges, and they were excellent football players, but they did something wrong. They didn't keep up with their academics. They did something that got them removed from that football program. Okay. And so this college would recruit these students and have them come in and play. Now this is a community college, and so there's usually only about a 1 year chance to make it to the big leagues, either make it back into a university team or make it to the NFL. Okay, and um, uh, when every year I learned that I needed to set some time aside whenever the NFL draft came around, or when there were recruiters from other universities watching the football games, because almost always there would be a group of football players who would start engaging in high risk behaviors. They'd start excessively drinking. They'd start damaging property. They would start mistreating their girlfriends. They would enter into high risk sexual and physical activities, and they would completely self disintegrate. Okay. And when I brought them into my office, it usually came down to um, the only thing that they were ever made worthy or feel worthy of was on the football field. They define themselves as football players. They define themselves at this, and this was their last chance. And now they don't know what to do with their life. Their life is completely destroyed. And sadly, for a lot of these young men, they would end up either doing something more foolish, or they would not even graduate from college, and they would go back to their home of origin. And I remember getting a letter from one saying, "Yeah, I just sit on the porch with my dad every day now again." Um, and so this is a form of identity confusion, where one invests completely into just one singular identity. Okay. The second type of identity confusion is you ask the adolescent who they are, and they instantly state, "Well, I'm not a jock, I'm not a nerd, I'm not a stoner." I don't know if I'm using too old school terms, but I'm not good. I'm not like those anyone. I'm not like this. I'm not like this. But then you go back and you ask who they are, and they repeat, "Well, I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not those." So they have an understanding, if you want to put it that way, of everything that they're not, but they have no understanding of who they are and what they are. They have really no self concept other than that they know they're not this group or that thing. Okay. And in these situations, what we do find is that these individuals do grow up, and they tend to be in constantly in unstable relationships. This is the worker who is constantly going from job to job to job because they think they could do the job better than their boss does, and the boss doesn't listen, and then they get fired. Um, uh, and constantly jumping from place to place because they've really never developed a solid sense of who they are. They just know they're not like the other idiots in the world, as they define that. Okay. So this is another form of role confusion that we work with. So, and again, kind of some piece of advice: if you have adolescents in your life, encourage them to try different things. This is why advice in the elementary age group, you expose your children to different sports, different musics, different, and so that they have this ability to grab on to all of those things that they feel connection with. Okay. And that's kind of the idea behind that. We will come back to this a little bit later in the course, but I do want to move on with Erikson's theory. So, in one, we develop a healthy identity. We understand that we're more than just one thing, that we're a conglomerate of all different not personalities, identities, and self concepts, and that we have value beyond just, you know, football or playing the guitar, so something like that. Okay. And then role confusion, again, it can take two forms. Role confusion in that the person seeps themselves into one singular identity, or They know everything they're not, but they don't know who they are as an individual. Okay. And then we go into the next years. And you could guess by the terminology why this stage is a stage. This is when we're going to start looking for a long-term partner. I have a lot of young adults come and say, well, I really am looking for independence during this years, those kinds of things. And I kind of go, yeah, okay. Uh, that's one thing that we want during this period of life, but there's something that is more common. In fact, if we find young adults between the 18 and 25 and we measure certain things, we know that on average, young men think about this every 90 seconds, and young women think about it every 3 hours, and that is sex. Okay. And so, based on that, Erikson felt that this was the best time in life to develop intimacy versus isolation. Okay. And if you can guess, if you have some healthy trust, autonomy, initiative, industry, you have a strong sense of who you are as an individual, this is going to set you up for healthy intimacy, meaning that you're going to be able to engage in a relationship, establish healthy communication and healthy boundaries, and you're going to more likely experience more long-term types of intimacy. Okay. But if you've developed a lot of mistrust and you feel a lot of shame and doubt and guilt, you don't feel like you're as good as other people, you're not really confident in who you are as an individual, this is going to set you up for isolation. Okay. And again, just like role confusion, there's two types of isolation. Okay. The first isolation is when a person puts their love energy into non-human objects. Okay. So this is the person who becomes the workaholic. This is the person who spends thousands and thousands of dollars working on their vehicle and working on and building it to be like a super hot rod. This is the proverbial cat woman or dog man. That they want to avoid the pitfalls of human relationships. So they invest their energies into non-human endeavors. Okay. That's one form of isolation, according to Erikson. Okay. The second form of isolation is a person who really, really, really does want to have an intimate relationship. They value the idea of having a partner and having someone in their life that they could rely on and that they could trust. Okay. And so they start a relationship, but then for some reason, around as the relationship goes, around the 6 to 9 month period, they dump the person, but then they either have started or immediately after will get into another relationship for 6 to 9 months or shorter. Okay. And so what is this person experiencing based on how they were raised and interacted with their social world? Well, in a relationship, we usually don't start with our worst self. We start with the best of who we are. So, just as an example, so you go over to a new intimate partner's home and the dishes are done, the bed is made, the floor is vacuumed, everything is clean, and everything is perfect, right? And then we go on over time, and eventually, you're sitting on the couch and your partner lifts up their butt cheek and lets out a little fart. You go over and you notice that the dishes aren't always done, and the bed isn't always made, and the floor isn't always clean. Um, and that maybe they use a little bit more profanity than they did in the beginning of the relationship, and you start to go, okay, this relationship is becoming real. This is becoming real life. It's no longer these two individuals that are trying to act perfect with each other. And this is a human thing. Humans cannot hold in their qualities, their good qualities or their bad qualities for very long. Eventually, we'll let them all out, okay, and give the world the full view of who we are. And so eventually we go down. So this is probably around 2, 3 months, and you're noticing, okay, this is becoming real, real, real. And then you start to notice that at your place, there's two toothbrushes. Maybe there's another key on your key ring to her apartment or his apartment. And this then denotes something we call commitment. Okay. And if you think of someone who has developed severe mistrust and shame and inferiority, this becomes very, very scary. And so the individual wants to escape that fear of what would happen, because a world of chaos is more predictable to them than a world that looks stable and real. And so they may already be seeking that excitement of the beginning of a relationship again, or they might dump the person and just start over. So once they get to a certain point, usually around 6 to 9 months, they dump someone and then they start with another relationship. Okay. These are the two forms of isolation. And I do want to just point this out. This isn't physical isolation, it's psychological isolation. The person who invests in their non-human objects, they still can have friends, they still can have family members and those types of things. And same with this other person. But when it comes to intimate relationships, this constant fear of the unknown and the instability of relationships and the home becomes so anxiety provoking that the person fears relationships with others, especially when those relationships become real. Okay. So this is intimacy versus isolation. Now, just to kind of get through these next part real quick so I can open up for questions. During middle age, we have what's called generivity versus stagnation. And I'm going to explain this one really quick. We get to, let's say, our 40s, maybe our 50s or so, and we look back on life and we kind of go, oh, here, well, I'll give two case scenarios. The person goes, I've been really successful in my work. I have stable job. I make a difference in what I do. Um, my marriage is going really, really well. Uh, my son is going to graduate from high school this year. My daughter's going to graduate from college next year. And this person realizes, life has been really good to me and has been fair to me. And so this is the time when the individual starts to give back to their community. And indeed, it is around the 40s and 50s where we see most individuals. There are definitely some outliers in this that tend start to attend church more often, tend to start to run for school boards and city council seats, and start to donate more time at the food bank or donate more money to nonprofits. This is where we see the increase in those giving back behaviors. Um, and then there's the other individual. So that's generivity. Stagnation is, let's say, a guy goes, oh man, I'm on my fifth job in 2 years. I'm getting divorced for the third time. My son's in jail. My daughter doesn't talk to me. I'm renting from month to month. My car's about to break down. This is an extreme example, I hope. And the person goes back, you know what, life has given me a bad dealing, and there must be something that I missed, that I did not didn't happen to me, that the world has just crapped on me. Okay. And this enters the stage of stagnation. And as you could guess, there's two routes of stagnation. One is a person just becomes maybe a severe alcoholic addict and just gives up on the world, and doesn't try and doesn't move forward. Okay. Or this is the individual who goes back, and I'll give us some stereotyped example. The guy goes back and gets the hot rod he wanted in his teen years, and he gets a 20-year-old girlfriend. Okay. For the female, she goes back and she gets a body lift and a boob job, and whatnot, to make her feel like maybe that's things that she missed during those age groups. Okay. Now, those are stereotyped examples. Um, yeah, and there's lots of different reasons people do that, but this is just the example of it, is they try to go back in their previous years and figure out what they missed. Okay. Fortunately, for a lot of people that hit stagnation stage, is that this is also an opportunity to reevaluate their life. And we find that there is a lot of people who go through this evaluative state, but then they go back to college, or they go to rehab, or they do something to improve their life. So, and then the last stage of life, where we hit ego integrity versus despair. Okay. Now, what these two things are is it kind of goes back to the realization of immortality. Okay. As we hit our 65 plus years, maybe even into our 50s and stuff, we start losing parents, we start losing brothers and sisters, uncles and aunts, friends. And we come to the realization that somehow we have difficulty comprehending in our early years, is that life does end. There is an end point. Okay. And we come to the realization that if I'm going to be remembered, if you want to think about this, immortality isn't the body being physically immortal. It's whether people think about us and remember us. Okay. If you want to put it in cognitive terms purely, what makes, for example, Jesus Christ immortal is we keep him in our memories. People like George Washington, people like Martin Luther King, all of those guys are kind of immortalized because we remember the things that they did when they were here. Okay. Even bad people, Hitler. Yeah, I shouldn't say all immortalized people are good people. Okay. And so we come to the realization that my existence only matters if I'm remembered when I leave here. And again, we go through this evaluative phase. And if we still have family that come and visit us, if we still have work seeking us out and seeking advice from our occupation, or maybe we made some change in the workplace that made our company do better. Maybe we volunteered, or were made some good changes in our community. This is a person who can pass with what's known, or live their elderly years with what's known as ego integrity, meaning that they will live their life knowing that after they're gone, they will be remembered. Okay. And research on this actually shows that individuals who maintain connection with their occupation after retirement People who maintain social connections with their family and their friends, who still actively engage in their community, tend to live longer. In fact, those are better predictors of your lifespan than eating habits, exercise habits, and things like smoking or drinking. Okay. And so there's some things to be said about this idea of ego integrity. Despair is when you get to your older years and family no longer visits you, friends don't seek you out, your work has long forgotten you, your community you really have nothing to do with. And so this is a person who just kind of goes, I'm not going to be remembered. I'm not going to be well regarded. No one's going to care if I'm here or not. Okay. And this is a person who lives in despair. It's the person who shows up to the nursing home, sits in the chair, and waits for life to end. Okay. Um, and so, and again, if we look at it from predictive qualities, from those predictive things, people who are disengaged, are cut off their social world, cut off their occupational world, and all of those things tend to pass away at earlier ages than later ages. Okay. All right. So with that being said, let me stop